Letter 7. Portsmouth, October 31, 1795. You, no doubt, expected that my next letter would be addressed to you from Cork, and will be surprised to find that I am still at Portsmouth, but this is among the numberless uncertainties of my present calling. Upon receiving our instructions to repair on board the Bridgewater, Dr. Henderson and myself took a boat and went off to Spithead, intending to join her, but, after sailing and rowing amidst the fleets there, and at St. Helens, through nearly the whole of the day, we, at last, returned without being able to find our ship. We hailed a great number of vessels with inquiries, but could obtain no accurate tidings of the Bridgewater. One had no knowledge of her whatever, another knew her, but could not tell where she lay, a third had never heard her name. Some had seen her but said she had shifted her berth, some thought she had dropped down to St. Helens, some believed she lay at the Mother Bank, and others understood that she had sailed. Amidst all these contradictory reports we could neither find the ship nor learn any certain intelligence respecting her. Hence, after a most tiresome and fatiguing round, and consuming nearly a whole day in quest of the Bridgewater, it only remained for us to return to Portsmouth and again wait for further orders. Previous to going into the boat, we had been informed at the transport office that the vessel we inquired for had received instructions to sail without delay. It is therefore probable that she was getting under way at the very moment we went off in search of her. The following morning we learned that she had actually sailed for Cork. After the account I gave you in my last letter regarding this ship, you will not imagine that our disappointment was very afflicting, and I candidly confess that my greatest uneasiness, upon the occasion, proceeded from our sickening tour in the boat. The revived hope of seeing the Ulysses, and the prospect of regaining the society of our friend master, held out to us more than a compensation for our toil. In the latter expectation we were speedily gratified, but the satisfaction of greeting the Ulysses still remains in anticipation. The weather continues to be very unsettled. It has been stormy and tempestuous beyond all that is usual even at the roughest season of the year. On the 20th instant it blew a perfect hurricane like what we read of as sometimes happening in other countries, but unlike all that we are accustomed to witness in England. Had the fleet been at sea, something very disastrous would probably have befallen it, but as the weather has so long been stormy, we hope that the boisterous heavens will have exhausted themselves before the expedition sails. Between 10 and 11 o'clock, on the morning of the 29th, a tremendous gale began to blow. The sky blackened. The tumid clouds rolled in heavy masses, darting forth quick lightning, followed by loud bursts of thunder. The tearing gusts of wind brought with them violent showers of hail and deluging torrents of rain. The whole elements seemed to be moved in one convulsive effort. The vivid lightning traced its path in broad and fiery flashes, and the terrific thunder instantly followed as if raging to overtake them. At one instant it rolled in oppressed and convulsive sound, seeming to struggle against some great impediment that confined it to the clouds, and at the next it burst forth in full explosion, as though a match had suddenly fired the whole ordnance of heaven. Hailstones of uncommon magnitude beat down with a force and rapidity as if contending which should first reach the earth, and scarcely had they fallen before the sweeping violence of the wind forced them into heaps like deep drifted snow, in which state they remained for hours after the storm, notwithstanding the heavy torrents of rain which followed them. The houses were shaken, to a dangerous degree, by the excessive force of the tempest. The loud ocean rolled in tremendous seas, and broke in ruptured mountains on the shore. Many of the ships were driven from their anchors, some were dismasted, others cast away, and boats, set loose by the storm, were swallowed up by the troubled waters, and afterwards vomited, by the expelling throes of the sea, upon dry land. The hollow sound of the wind, the heavy beatings of the hail and rain through the thick forest of shipping lying in the harbor, together with the tremendous dashings of the sea and the troubled motion of the vessels upon its restless surface, all combined to render the scene greatly awful, but too high a degree of the terrific was intermixed with it for the spectator to regard its grandeur and sublimity in quiet contemplation. To convey any just idea of it would require the pen of a Milton or a Shakespeare. Great and general alarm prevailed, especially among the lower orders of people, in whose minds a fearful association was excited, carrying them infinitely beyond the probable injuries to be expected. They ran, trembling, into the remotest corners of their houses, uttering loud bewailings, and fearing that some dreadful visitation of the Almighty was upon them, and that He, in His wrath, was about to punish their sins by the destruction of the town and its wicked inhabitants. Nothing was heard but the howlings of the tempest. In all other respects a dread stillness reigned. No living thing was seen in the streets, and all around seemed hushed in the silent pause of consternation. When the violence of the storm had a little abated, and the rays of light began to issue through the broken clouds, the trembling multitude ventured forth, and assembling in groups at the doorways, relieved their apprehensions by relating them to each other in the restored comfort of mutual intercourse. At this moment I could not but remark the striking effect of that great and leading feature of our nature, the social principle. Had these people remained alone, hidden in the corners of their houses, their sense of alarm had probably continued much longer, but they derived manifest relief from communicating with each other, and the very act of relating their fears insensibly dispelled them. Having much curiosity to hear their remarks and observe their expressions of terror, I mixed with these associated groups, and found that their apprehensions had been great and various. Some had magnified the storm into an earthquake, sent to destroy them. Others believed it to be a hurricane that would bury them in the ruins of the town. Many imagined they were to be swallowed up by the sea, which threatened the place in huge and loud roaring billows. Some, widening their fears to the whole extent of our island, considered the awful scene as an omen to Parliament, which was to meet this day, to warn them against persisting in a cruel and bloody war. Others, looking to the immense fleets preparing for our expeditions, believed the whole about to be swallowed up because their employment was wicked, and all seemed to regard the tempest as a scourge intended to punish the vices and chastise the follies of mankind. Whilst every one contemplated the event as of vast and mighty import, busy imagination had tortured their individual fears into 1,000 forms. One worthy dame had felt the earth shake under her, another saw the whole street move, the olfactories of a third had perceived sulphurous fumes issuing from below, and some had even heard the church and other buildings falling into opened chasms and crashing amidst the shattered bowels of the earth. These secret terrors, you may believe, subsided with the storm, yet all, in soberest reason, vowed they had never known the like before. The injuries done were less than might have been expected. Some of the ships and boats necessarily suffered, a few houses were unroofed, and amidst the devastation, the windmill at Gosport was blown to the ground. It was at first reported that many lives were lost, but, happily, this report is not confirmed. The West India Fleet, the fleet for Gibraltar, and the Channel Fleet are all detained by tempestuous weather and contrary winds, and there are some among us who, from the pacific tendency of the King's speech, and other circumstances which they imagine to be favorable, would persuade themselves that our great expedition will never sail, or that, if it should get under way, negotiations for peace will prevent it from reaching the West Indies. I dare not hazard an opinion upon this subject. What say you politicians of London respecting it? But I have something to tell you more amusing than storms, and fleets, and troubled seas. You will remember our occasional conversations respecting the numberless perils and dangers that arise to the public from the license afforded, in this country, to every idle and impudent boaster of empirical remedies for the cure of disease, and, without any violent surprise, you will place the following fact among the host of absurdities that daily meet your eye and your ear. A physician, with whom I had the pleasure of conversing yesterday evening, was, some time ago, called to visit a patient who was wretchedly afflicted with hypochondriasis. She had long been under the care of the soi-disant and celebrated doctor, and had swallowed of his all-healing, all-restoring, all-strengthening, and never-failing cordial as much as had cost her 22 guineas. Still she was more and more low, dyspeptic, and hipped, and her poor flatulent stomach was cruelly annoyed by the repeated potions of this infallible specific. At length, after enduring the doctor and his remedy through a most tedious trial, and finding no relief, she grew impatient to know decidedly the nature of her malady, and, at one of her visits to the doctor, she pointedly importuned him to tell her the real and true name of her disease. When this great man, finding that his patient was urgent and that he could no longer evade the question, assumed a dignified and important air, and, with great gravity, made known to her his great opinion that she had a great fire in the bones. The poor burning lady, in full faith, credited the fiery tale, and, in the true sense of a hypochondriac believer, felt that not only her bones but her whole frame was rapidly consuming. Unhappily for the doctor, she soon discovered that taking his never-failing balsam was only adding fuel to her fire, and, at last, upon turning to the newspapers, she found that, in the long list of maladies to be cured by this omnipotent remedy, the bones, alas, had been forgotten and no promise made that it should extinguish the fire in the bones. Upon this she abandoned both cordial and doctor, and applied for relief to the physician who amused us with the history of the case.